Chapter 2238, Untitled. Chapter 2238, Untitled. Slow it down. It's scrolling so fast. At his age, Emperor Wu's eyesight wasn't as good, and all the words looked like flying insects. Feng Wu kept her gaze on the wall as she said in frustration, "Your Majesty, we wouldn't be so busy if we could slow it down." Emperor Wu was speechless. He then said in frustration, "Why is it only showing each person for 10 seconds? Scroll it back. I'd like to take another look." Feng Wu said, "Your Majesty, this thing only scrolls down. The earlier information is already gone. We can't stop it once it starts rolling." Emperor Wu said, "What?" Seeing that Emperor Wu was about to babble on, Feng Wu snapped, "Your Majesty, just tell your eunuchs to start transcribing. We'll lose our lead on a spy if we miss even one of the images. We don't want that to happen." Leaving out a spy might not be a big deal for Emperor Wu, but Feng Wu needed every name for her 10th trial. Everyone on that revival list had to die. Feng Wu couldn't afford any mistakes. "Do as she says." Emperor Wu forgot about his frustration and gave the order. Whoosh! The eunuchs wrote so fast that their hands didn't feel like theirs anymore. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. The Dongsang Kingdom was so cunning. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to remember everything at this speed. Even Feng Wu felt a little overwhelmed. Gosh! Feng Wu missed her life in the modern world now. Back then, she didn't need to work so hard to remember everything. All she needed was to take out her phone and start recording. She smacked her head. How could she forget about such an important thing? She had the spiritual fossil stone. She could record things with the stone. Although it wasn't as convenient as a mobile phone, it would still work. While everyone else was staring at the wall, Feng Wu quietly took out the stone and started recording from inside her sleeve. Phew! Now that things had become much easier, she had time to observe the others. Feng Sun was scratching his head and about to snap. Xian Yi looked overwhelmed. Emperor Wu looked like he was about to give up. Feng Wu then glanced at Ranmil, who was next to Emperor Wu. As Emperor Wu's favorite woman at the moment, Ranmil didn't try to record the information on the wall. Instead, she clenched her fists and looked very nervous. She looked like she was worried that her secret was going to be exposed. What secret? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Did Ranmil's secret have something to do with the Dongsang Kingdom? Ranmil was a very careful person, but she was so anxious now that she didn't realize that Feng Wu was looking at her. That was interesting. Since each image only lasted for 10 seconds, it didn't take a long time to show them all. It was over in less than 15 minutes. Crack! The black stone in Feng Wu's hand vibrated and began to crack. Soon, it turned into powder. The last image disappeared at the same time. Chapter 2239, Untitled. Chapter 2239, Untitled. Phew! Many people let out a sigh of relief. Finally, Feng Sun looked over his shoulder and saw a second team of eunuchs writing. The first team was already exhausted. Feng Sun was rendered speechless. He wasn't much better either. All the brain work had drained him, and he could barely stand up. Feng Wu helped him sit down on the side. "Ah!" Feng Sun suddenly cried out in despair. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Feng Sun shouted, "What should I do now? I can't remember anything I saw. Apart from the last image, I can't recall anything. I'm so stupid." Feng Wu said, "Don't worry about it. Look, so many people were recording it. We won't miss much. Plus, she still had her spiritual fossil stone. The Dongsang Kingdom is very cunning." Feng Sun snorted. 10 seconds an image. That was so difficult. If we didn't have so many people to help us, we would never be able to remember it all. However, we don't know what we have yet. Let's gather everything first. Feng Wu asked the eunuchs to summarize everything they had so that they would have something for Emperor Wu. but it wasn't as satisfying as they had expected. That was because there were over 20 of them, and this is all you have? A lot of it are repeats. Feng Wu shook her head. There are no names and only 10 pictures. The last 3 are a mess. You can't even see their faces. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. She hadn't realized that ordinary people were so limited in their abilities. Feng Sun smiled bitterly. Xiao Wu, you're asking too much. They only had 10 seconds for each image, and that was extremely hard. Consort Ranmil seemed relieved, and she finally had time to mock Feng Wu. Why are you blaming other people? How about you? How many names did you memorize? Ranmil sneered at Feng Wu. You're clearly a hypocrite. Emperor Wu flipped through the names on the revival list. He noticed that the names were divided into 7 different teams. Many of them had a note that said dead. The eunuchs weren't completely idiot. For the dead ones, they knew that they only needed to give a name. But for the surviving ones, they only managed to write down the first and last sentences of the personal information. Even then, they had only recorded 13 people. Emperor Wu wanted to scold them, but he hadn't been much better and probably would have done a worse job. Despite his disappointment, he couldn't say anything. Hearing what Ranmil said, Emperor Wu asked Feng Wu, "Are you sure that's everyone on the revival list?" Feng Wu nodded. Yes. Emperor Wu asked, "How many names did you memorize?" Ranmil gloated. She decided that Feng Wu couldn't affect anything since Ranmil herself was the most influential woman in the empire right now. Feng Wu said, "Consort Ranmil seems very happy. How many names did you memorize?" Chapter 2240 Untitled. Chapter 2240 Untitled. Consort Ranmil, how much information did you memorize? Feng Wu looked at her with a smile. Ranmil said arrogantly, "More than you." Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and came up with a plan. She wanted to test Ranmil to see if she really had connections with the Dongsang kingdom. At that thought, Feng Wu picked up the notebook that had everyone's notes in it and glanced at Ranmil. Who should go first? You or me? Ranmil had her own plan. She smirked and said, "I can remember more than you. If I go first, you won't have anything to write down." Feng Wu said, "Is that so? In that case, I'll start first, Consort Ranmil." Ranmil gritted her teeth. She felt that Feng Wu was deliberately calling her Consort Ranmil in front of Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu then started filling in the gaps in the note. She could fill in all the blanks, but why should she? She could keep the completed list to herself. Why should she share it with everyone else? Therefore, she pretended she was having a difficult time remembering everything. She left out the dead ones. Of the surviving 30 or so people, only a dozen or so had names. Feng Wu used green ink. She scratched her head when she reached the 14th man and eventually put down her pen. That isn't much. Ranmil flipped through the pages. Feng Wu, aren't you supposed to have a very good memory? You've written down so little. Feng Sun was equally perplexed. It was normal that he couldn't remember much. But if Feng Wu had really learned level 7 inscriptions when she was 6, she should have an excellent memory. She should be able to remember much more. Had she held back the information? Feng Wu remained calm despite Ranmil's mocking. She said, "Well, I had a difficult battle up on the mountain and almost died. I haven't fully recovered yet. That's why I can't remember much." That was quite impressive, fighting a spiritual king. "I didn't expect to see you come back alive," Ranmil said casually. Feng Wu screamed inwardly. How did Ranmil know that? She turned to Feng Sun, who shook his head in bewilderment. He and Xian Yi had followed Feng Wu here after they left the mountain. He hadn't had time to tell anyone about the battle. Ranmil gave Feng Wu one more glance without saying another word. What was she supposed to say? Praise Feng Wu for her fast improvement? Of course she would never do that. Ranmil spared no effort in trying to discourage Feng Wu. She took the notebook and started writing in purple ink. Her pupils contracted when she saw the 13th person. She remembered that the man was called Zhou Dapeng, and he was a spy who worked in the intelligence department. He was an expert assassin with a flame-shaped birthmark on his back. Chapter 2241 Untitled. Chapter 2241 Untitled. But Zhou Dapeng's name was wrong in the record, and so were his features. The flame-shaped birthmark had become a mole. It was written in green ink, indicating that it was Feng Wu who had put this down. Ranmil hesitated, wondering if she should correct the record. She couldn't make up her mind. If she didn't do anything, Zhou Dapeng would definitely be caught. She was practically on the Dongsang Kingdom's side, and she couldn't let that happen. Moreover, she could use this opportunity to laugh at Feng Wu. However, she didn't know everything. Feng Wu had made the mistake on purpose. It was a trap for Ranmil. As long as Ranmil hesitated, it would mean that she had a guilty conscience. Feng Wu had already noticed Ranmil's hesitation. In the end, Ranmil made the decision to correct Zhou Dapeng's name in the end. She rolled her eyes at Feng Wu and said, "You're so hopeless. This man is called Zhou Dapeng, and he has a flame-shaped birthmark." Feng Wu frowned. "Are you sure?" Ranmil said, "Of course I am. Have someone look it up if you like. There must be a man called Zhou Dapeng in the intelligence department. Stop bragging about your memory already." She then threw aside her pen and said arrogantly, "I'm done." She glanced at Jun Linyuan as she spoke. She wanted to show Jun Linyuan who the really smart girl was. And she wanted Jun Linyuan to admit that giving up her was the worst decision he had ever made. Emperor Wu took the notebook and frowned. "Is that all? There's only detailed information on 15 people here." Ranmil said in a coquettish manner, "Your Majesty, the images moved too fast. I've already done a very good job." Emperor Wu nodded. Ranmil tugged at his sleeve and said, "Your Majesty, who do you think is better, me or Feng Wu?" Emperor Wu said, "Well." Ranmil said, "Your Majesty, it's quite easy to tell. The information is written in 2 colors. Which do you think is more important? The green words or the purple ones?" The purple notes outshone the green ones in both their quantity and significance. Emperor Wu immediately said, "The purple notes, of course." "Yes." Ranmil was pleased. She had only given over a dozen names out, and reckoned that the man in black could afford to lose them. "Your Majesty, I won. May I have that now?" Ranmil pointed at a seal which hung on Emperor Wu's belt. It was the Emperor's seal, and holding it was equivalent to having the Emperor around. That was to say, the holder of the seal could do pretty much anything in the Junwu Empire, as long as they didn't commit some serious crime. Emperor Wu hesitated, so Ranmil said, "Your Majesty, I worked so hard to memorize everything that I have a headache. I did a good job, didn't I? There are a lot of spies." Chapter 2242 Untitled. Chapter 2242 Untitled. Emperor Wu agreed that Consort Ranmil had done a good job, but he couldn't make it look so easy. For one, if he just let her have it, she might not cherish it. For another, he had to appear fair. Therefore, Emperor Wu said, "I was going to give this seal to the winner of the competition. I have to be fair." The corner of Feng Sun's mouth twitched. If it was so fair, why didn't he say so before the competition started? He obviously wanted to give Ranmil that seal. Emperor Wu took the seal from his belt and was about to give it to Ranmil. Feng Sun was anxious. Was Feng Wu going to let her take the seal just like that? It was such an important seal. If the spy incident hadn't happened, Ranmil could have all the seals she wanted, but now that Feng Wu already knew that Ranmil had connections with the Dongsang Kingdom, she couldn't let that happen. Just then, Feng Wu glanced at Ranmil and said, "Why do I feel that I can remember better now?" Emperor Wu stopped moving. Feng Wu had already taken the notebook and started writing in green ink again. Whoosh! Soon, she filled another 10 pages. There was a person on each page. Ranmil saw that Feng Wu was writing non-stop, and seemed very confident in what she was writing. All they could hear was the sound of turning pages. Ranmil felt as if someone had slapped her in the face. Emperor Wu had the same feeling. That's all I can remember. Feng Wu put down her pen and gave the notebook to Emperor Wu. She had come up with information on more than 15 people. There were over 30 people in total now. That was to say, there was information on all the surviving members. You made that up? Ranmil stared at Feng Wu. She looked at the expression on Emperor Wu's face before she stared at Feng Wu. How can you remember so much? You filled in the blanks and provided us with 18 more names. You can't remember them all. Feng Wu smiled at Ranmil. Just because you can do it doesn't mean other people can't. I don't believe you. Ranmil took Emperor Wu's hand and said, I have the best memory, and I could only remember a little over 10 names. She can't have done better than me. Emperor Wu stared at Feng Wu and asked in an intimidating tone, What's going on here? Feng Wu said, My memory just came back to me. Emperor Wu said, Do you think I'll believe that? Feng Wu said, Your Majesty is as wise as expected. Nothing gets past you. Ranmil had been eyeing that seal for a very long time, so she wouldn't give up easily. Feng Wu, you're giving false information. Do you know how serious the consequences are? Chapter 2243 Untitled. Chapter 2243 Untitled. They're spies of the Dongseng Kingdom, and the safety of the Empire is on the line. Did you give up your loyalty just because you were hurt before? I'm fine with you slacking off on normal days, but how can you do that in a critical moment like this? Feng Wu said, I'm not slacking off. Ranmil said, You gave us false information. Although I didn't memorize everything, I saw it all, and I'm sure that you're not telling the truth. Feng Wu said, I see that Consort Ranmil is very sure of herself. Ranmil said, I'm proud of my memory. Feng Wu said, In that case, please see for yourself. She then took out the spiritual fossil stone, activated it, and projected the recording onto the wall. It was none other than the revival list from before. Everyone was shocked. Feng Sun wondered why he hadn't thought of that before. Xian Yi felt that all his efforts had been for nothing. Emperor Wu realized that the girl had been tricking them all along. Jun Linyuan's eyes twinkled. The girl had surprised him yet again. Ranmil looked like she had seen a ghost. You have a spiritual fossil stone. You recorded it. That's cheating. Yes, you cheated. Ranmil stared at Feng Wu. You didn't memorize it yourself. Feng Wu said, In terms of what we're doing here, which is more important, the means or the result? Ranmil was rendered speechless. The spiritual fossil stone had recorded the images, and they would soon see if Feng Wu was telling the truth. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. The girl still remembered to use the spiritual fossil stone when everything was happening so fast. What a genius! Feng Wu said, Your Majesty, who do you think has won, me or Consort Ranmil? Naturally, Emperor Wu wanted Consort Ranmil to win, but Feng Wu was the actual winner. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. He had been wanting to give that seal to Consort Ranmil but hadn't found a chance. It had never occurred to him that the seal would go to Feng Wu one day. However, while Emperor Wu tried to downplay the whole thing, Jun Linyuan spoke. Give Feng Wu the seal, he said coldly. Emperor Wu wanted to smack him in the head. Had he forgotten whose son he was? But everyone was watching, and Emperor Wu couldn't go back on his word. He stared at Feng Wu instead. If Feng Wu was smart enough, she should turn down the offer. However, Feng Wu smiled at Emperor Wu and asked, Really? I can have the seal? Emperor Wu glared at her. That girl was as bad as Jun Linyuan. But as an emperor, he had to keep his word. He took off the seal and tossed it at Feng Wu with a warning. If you dare abuse this privilege, I'll take it back. Chapter 2244, Untitled. Chapter 2244, Untitled. Yes, of course. Thank you, Your Majesty. Feng Wu beamed at him. Ranmil was so angry that she thought she was going to lose her mind. How could he do that? She was the one who had suggested using the seal as the stake. Giving it to Feng Wu was like slapping her in the face. And everyone was watching. What would Jun Linyuan think of her? The seal wasn't what she wanted the most. She wanted Jun Linyuan to regret it. She wanted Jun Linyuan to regret choosing Feng Wu over her. Ranmil still tugged at Emperor Wu's sleeve. Emperor Wu took Ranmil's hand and comforted her. I'll give you something else, I promise. But Ranmil only wanted to save face in front of Feng Wu. Before she could think of anything, they heard footsteps outside. It was none other than Lady Northern Feng, Feng Sun's mother. Xiao Wu. She was thrilled to see Feng Wu and couldn't stop looking her up and down. Feng Wu smiled and said, "Why are you so worried about me?" After making sure that everything was fine with Feng Wu, Lady Northern Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Xiao Wu, I was so scared. I thought my heart was going to stop when you fought that spiritual king. I'm so glad to see you back. Did His Royal Highness save you? Emperor Wu and the others looked at Feng Wu as well. They also wanted to know how Feng Wu had gotten away from the spiritual king. But Feng Wu was even more curious. You all know about the battle. How? She had thought that no one would know. Ranmil was going to have a headache. She had been so excited about defeating Feng Wu, but now Feng Wu had stolen the spotlight again. She remembered that Feng Wu had risen by a whole stage, and didn't want to hear about it anymore. Your Majesty, I have a headache. Ranmil took Emperor Wu's hand and wanted to lead him away. But Feng Wu wouldn't let that happen. She had already started talking. Consort Ranmil mentioned my battle against the spiritual king as well, but I don't recall seeing anyone around. Why does it seem that everyone knows about it? Consort Ranmil didn't tell me why. Is it some sort of secret? Lady Northern Feng took Feng Wu's hand and smiled. Speaking of that, we have Consort Ranmil to thank. Ranmil didn't want to hear another word about it. Somehow, Lady Northern Feng just wouldn't stop talking. Xiao Wu, Consort Ranmil is so modest. She paid a big price for you. You really should thank her properly. Feng Wu asked, Really? What did Consort Ranmil do for me? Lady Northern Feng immediately told Feng Wu everything about how Ranmil had located her with the crystal ball. What? Feng Wu's stomach lurched. That was to say, they had seen everything, including her successive advancements. Chapter 2245, Untitled. Chapter 2245, Untitled. So, you all know that Feng Wu cleared her throat. That I've advanced a few levels. Lady Northern Feng was excited to hear the question. She took Feng Wu's hand and said, Xiao Wu, you're so amazing. How did you do that? You were a level 7 spiritual elder when you entered the mountain, but you're now a level 7 spiritual lord after you returned. That's incredible. Ranmil clenched her fist. Why wouldn't this woman stop talking? She didn't want to hear about it anymore. Feng Sun stared at his mother in disbelief. What? Xiao Wu is a level 7 spiritual lord. Lady Northern Feng said, That's right. We all saw it. Master Dugu, Lord Mu, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager, His Majesty, Empress Dugu, Consort Ranmil, and Master Feng were all there. Don't Master Zhua and Master Dugu go everywhere together? Wasn't Master Zhua there? Feng Wu kept her eyes on Ranmil when she asked the question. However, Ranmil didn't react to Master Zhua's name when it was mentioned. That was to say, she hadn't been working with him. So, there was only one candidate left. The enemies they were fighting were from the Dongseng Kingdom and the Zhua family. and the only major force left was. Feng Wu had suspected Ranmil because of the things she had done before. Why would Ranmil locate Feng Wu? She couldn't have wanted to show everyone Feng Wu's glorious moment. She had done so probably because she believed that Feng Wu was going to be killed and wanted everyone to see it. That was why she used everything in her power to broadcast the battle. At that thought, Feng Wu smiled at Ranmil and said, "Thank you, Consort Ranmil. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known about my new cultivation level." Ranmil gritted her teeth. Feng Sun was agitated. "Xiao Wu is already a level 7 spiritual lord. Really? Xiao Wu, you're going to surpass me. I'm the big brother. How am I going to protect my little sister if I'm the weaker one?" He buried his face in his hands. Xian Yi had an indescribable look on his face as well. Even he found Feng Wu's progress incredible. He was more advanced than Feng Sun but not by much. "Mom, I want to go to the northern border. I want to train myself on the battlefield," Feng Sun said loudly to his mother. Lady Northern Feng smacked him in the forehead. "You're my only son, and your father is already doing all the fighting on the front line. You're not going anywhere." Feng Sun darted away. No one knew what was going on in his head. Lady Northern Feng's intervention successfully chased Ranmil away. She returned to her tent. While Emperor Wu was discussing how to eliminate the spies with his officials, a man in black entered her tent without making a sound. Ranmil was brushing her hair in front of the mirror. Chapter 2246, Untitled. Chapter 2246, Untitled. As usual, Qing Chao had been knocked unconscious. Seeing her maid lying motionlessly on the floor, Ranmil said grumpily, "Can't you use a gentler method?" The man in black was as taciturn as always. He didn't reply to Ranmil's protest and only looked at her with cold eyes. "You're doomed." Ranmil sneered at him. The man had been threatening her for a long time. After the frustrating experience with Feng Wu, Ranmil decided to lash out at the man. The man had a black scarf over his face and a hood over his head. His cold eyes were the only part of his face that was exposed. Ranmil said mockingly, "Someone has found your revival list." The man narrowed his eyes. "Who?" Ranmil had brought up the subject because she wanted to lead the man to Feng Wu. She said matter-of-factly, "Who do you think? It's Feng Wu, obviously. You have no idea how capable she is. She found this little black stone that could project images onto the wall, and we all saw the information of different people, but it scrolled down so fast and self-destructed at the end. We weren't able to remember much, but Feng Wu isn't like us. She recorded everything with the spiritual fossil stone before writing them down. That was how she was able to get everyone's names." The man's eyes glinted coldly. Ranmil sighed. "Well, His Majesty already knows the list, and he's coming up with a plan to catch those people as we speak." The man gave Ranmil one last glance before he left without another word. Ranmil smiled. Did the man think that she would put up with him forever? Did Feng Wu think that she could show off her little talent just like that? The two of them could fight to the death. They were 3 days away from the imperial capital, but at Emperor Wu's command, they reached the city in 1 day. Everyone went back home that night. Emperor Wu took over the case after he obtained the list, and Feng Wu was happy for the burden to be lifted from her shoulders. She could just wait to see the outcome. Jun Linyuan wanted to take Feng Wu back to his residence, but Feng Wu didn't want to go. Now that the 9th trial was finished, Feng Wu couldn't stay far away enough from the Crown Prince. As a result, His Royal Highness had been quite grumpy recently. Feng Wu missed her home and all her family members. Chaoga had wanted to go back home with Feng Wu, but her father wouldn't let her, so Feng Wu let her go back to solve her own issues first. Being a level 7 spiritual elder, Chaoga could handle a lot of things on her own. If her father knew Chaoga's capability now, he would probably regret having helped his second wife chase Xiaoge away. Feng Wu and Qiuling each rode a horse and headed back home. The one that Feng Wu was riding was the blood seahorse that she had tamed in the grassland. Chapter 2247 Untitled. Chapter 2247 Untitled. The horse had quite a story. It used to be Qinghuan's ride before it was abandoned. Feng Wu then tamed it, but it went missing for a while. To her surprise, Jun Linyuan brought it back and gave it to her before she went back home. Feng Wu would be lying if she said that she wasn't moved. Having spent some time together, Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were already quite familiar with each other. They might not be lovers, but they were at least friends. That was what Feng Wu believed. Feng Wu smiled at Jun Linyuan before she rode away. She rode off, laughing wholeheartedly. After this trip to the grassland, Qiuling was no longer who she used to be. Since she was recognized as a genius now, Emperor Wu treated her much better. Gao had arranged a horse for her already. Feng Yanfeng and his family could only go back home all crammed together in a narrow carriage. Feng Yanfeng kept his silence while his wife sulked. She had been holding a grudge against Feng Wu over Feng Lu's death, but because she hadn't dealt with Feng Wu in the past few days, no one had realized it. How can that girl still be laughing? If Lu was still alive, she would be so much prettier. She's laughing, but my daughter will never come back. Lady Wang started crying. Feng Yanfeng remained silent with his dark face. Feng Sang clenched her fists. Mother, don't worry. I'll work very hard and take revenge for Lu. I'll kill Feng Wu. Feng Yiran also nodded. That's right, Mother. Feng Wu won't be running around for much longer. We'll never forget what she has done. Lady Wang nodded. Shut up. Feng Yanfeng shouted so loudly that he almost startled the horse. Luckily, the groom was deaf and couldn't hear them. Lady Wang stopped crying and stared at Feng Yanfeng. Feng Yanfeng pointed at them. You idiots! Don't you have eyes? Can't you see how formidable Feng Wu is now? How are you going to kill her? Lady Wang wouldn't have it. What about Lu? Did she die for nothing? She had it coming. Feng Yanfeng finally said something that was reasonable. She picked the right team, Feng Wu's team, at first, but what did she do? She switched to Ranmil's side. Lady Wang said, so what? It was her right to choose. Feng Yanfeng said, everyone has to take responsibility for their own choices. Feng Lu made her choice, so she had to live with the consequences when that team failed. Lady Wang said, but she was only 13. She didn't understand anything. Feng Yanfeng said, she went to compete for the seed of the spirit source. Of course she knew the risks. Lady Wang said, but everyone else in that team survived. Ranmil was the team leader and she's still alive. Why did my daughter have to die? Feng Wu drove her to her death. Feng Yanfeng said, Feng Wu pushed Ranmil even harder, but what did Ranmil do? Chapter 2248 Untitled. Chapter 2248 Untitled. A wise man submits to fate, and she should have known better. She should have paid the price, as long as it could keep her alive. There's always a chance to get revenge. Look at Consort Ranmil. She's His Majesty's favorite now. Lady Wang said, but Lu was Feng Wu's cousin. They were family. How could Feng Wu be so heartless? Smack! Feng Yanfeng slapped her hard in the face. Both Feng Yiran and Feng Sang were astonished. Lady Wang burst into tears. You hit me. You hit me for that girl, the girl who killed your daughter. Feng Yanfeng. I hate you. Feng Yanfeng picked up the teapot and poured the tea over her head as she charged at him. Wake up. Do you think you own this world? Do you think everyone has to do your bidding? Do you think people will just endure what you do to them and never take revenge? You're so easy to see through. Wake up. This world values martial prowess above everything else. Do you think Xiao Wu doesn't know what you did to her 5 years ago? Of course she knows that Feng Lu was her cousin. Why do you think she killed Feng Lu, regardless of the consequences? Because she hates us. She hates us for everything we did 5 years ago. She hated Feng Lu for trying to kill her the whole time. She hates you for harming her mother. She killed Feng Lu because she wanted to warn us not to mess with her. She won't hesitate to kill us if we make her angry. She wouldn't dare, said Lady Wang. Feng Yanfeng found his wife ridiculous. She's backed by His Royal Highness and Northern Feng Mansion. She herself is also incredibly capable. I suppose that none of you know her real capability. I do. She's a level 7 spiritual elder, said Feng Sang. Yes, that's quite impressive, but it's not unachievable. A level 7 spiritual elder? Feng Yanfeng looked at his daughter as if she was a complete idiot. Do you still think that way? Father. Feng Sang looked at Feng Yanfeng in confusion. Feng Yanfeng said, How stupid are you? Feng Sang didn't understand the look in her father's eyes. It was a mixture of jealousy, hatred, and smugness. How strange. Feng Yanfeng waved them off. Forget it. It'll only discourage you. If they were told that Feng Wu was already a level 7 spiritual lord, they would probably feel utterly defeated. They were all of a similar age, but Feng Wu was so much better than they were. Feng Yanfeng was very disappointed. His son thought so highly of himself, but he was only a spiritual grandmaster now. And his proud daughter, who thought herself so efficient, was a mere spiritual grandmaster as well. Even Qiuling is better than you. How are you going to avenge your sister? Just let it go, Feng Yanfeng said in resignation. Chapter 2249, Untitled. Chapter 2249, Untitled. Feng Yanfeng had been filled with despair ever since he learned that Feng Wu had risen to become a level 7 spiritual lord. If he knew that Feng Wu was already a level 9 spiritual lord, he would probably fall to his knees on the ground. Although his tantrum forced Lady Wang to calm down, it was impossible to make her drop the idea of taking revenge. Feng Wu had no idea what was going on with Feng Yanfeng's family. She was busy getting back home. Instead of entering through the front gate, she rode her horse and jumped over the wall. Thump! Bloodsea horse landed steadily in the courtyard. The door to Fallen Star Yard was half open, and she could hear voices inside. Sister-in-law, you signed it yourself. You can't deny it now. It was a familiar voice. Granny Zhao said angrily, Lady Gu, you're frightening my lady. She hasn't agreed to anything. Please leave. Lady Gu? As in the wife of Feng Wu's third uncle. She remembered that her uncle had gone to work in a local office and had taken his family with him. Had they come back to the imperial capital? Lady Gu was smiling, but her tone was threatening. Sister-in-law, this is your signature. If you still want to deny it, I don't mind taking this to court. Uncle Qiu and Granny Zhao shielded the lady with their own bodies. Lady Gu, please leave. Lady Gu said, Granny Zhao, Uncle Qiu, once my sister-in-law remarries, why don't you come and work for me? Feng Wu was furious. How dare she say such a thing? Qiuling wanted to charge into the courtyard, but Feng Wu stopped her. She wanted to hear Lady Gu's plan. Granny Zhao said, Lady Gu, my lady isn't marrying anyone. Lady Gu smirked. That's not for her to decide. With that face of hers, it'll be a great waste if she just stays here in this courtyard. The Lord of Yongxing Manor doesn't mind her past and wants to take her after his first wife's death. She has to grab this chance before it goes away. Lady Gu didn't try to keep it from the beautiful lady. She treated her as a dimwit. Feng Wu looked inside and saw her mother trembling behind Granny Zhao. That woman was frightening her. Uncle Qiu glared at Lady Gu. Lady Gu, please show some respect. When Miss Wu comes back, she won't be pleased if she knows how you've been treating her mother. Uncle Chiu, are you talking about my sister, the good-for-nothing? That was Feng Qi, Lady Gu's daughter. Feng Qi was of the same age as Feng Wu, but they had been treated quite differently when they were little. Well, I do remember my sister. It was very bold of her to come back from northern border city. I see that she doesn't mind people laughing at her. Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao were furious, but they were only servants and couldn't do anything. But someone took action. And that was Feng Wu's beautiful mother. Only one thing could really affect her, and that was Feng Wu. Xiao Wu was the prettiest girl. Xiao Wu was the most lovely girl. Xiao Wu was the most popular girl. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. Chapter 2250 Untitled. Chapter 2250 Untitled. The beautiful lady wouldn't hear anything bad about Xiao Wu. Those who did were her enemies, and she would go berserk. As expected. Hearing what Feng Qi said, the beautiful lady was furious. She grabbed a broomstick and smacked it down on Feng Qi's face. Die! In her world, there was no seniority, nor was there right or wrong. She only cared about her Xiao Wu. Die! 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 The beautiful lady started hitting Feng Qi with the broomstick. Feng Qi was frightened. She had never expected her frail-looking aunt to hit her so hard with a broomstick. Feng Qi had been cultivating since she was little and had been learning from a great teacher. Once the initial shock was over, she struck back. However, her guard moved faster. The guard had an unassuming look, but one could tell that he was very capable. He was faster than Feng Qi. He thought that he could easily take down the beautiful lady because he was the most capable person in the courtyard. But he was wrong. He was knocked away. The person kicked him so hard that his ribs were broken, and he felt as if his internal organs had been torn apart. He smashed into the wall, and it shattered at the impact. He pressed his hands to his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. There were some lumps in his blood. It was obvious that his internal organs had been wrecked. Qingyi, are you all right? Feng Qi ran to his side, her voice full of concern. Qingyi wanted to say something but couldn't make a sound. He wanted to tell his mistress to be careful, but Feng Qi was too furious to care about anything else. She turned around and glared at Qiuling. The attacker wasn't Feng Wu. It was Qiuling, the level 7 spiritual elder. It just wasn't Lady Gu. Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu were also astonished. How had Qiuling become so capable after the last few months? Meanwhile, Feng Wu ran to her mother. Die! Die! The beautiful lady and the broomstick made an amusing picture, but Feng Wu felt so sorry for her. Mom, it's me. Xiao Wu is back. Feng Wu held her by the waist. Finally, the lady calmed down. She recognized the girl's face. Although she wasn't the prettiest girl in the world, she was still her Xiao Wu. Feng Wu would be speechless if she knew her mother's opinion of her appearance. In other people's eyes, Feng Wu was a stunning girl. Apart from her mother, Feng Wu hadn't met anyone else who was prettier than her. Xiao Wu. The beautiful lady grabbed Feng Wu and wouldn't let go. Feng Wu patted her back and said, Mom, I won't let it happen again. I promise. This time, she had brought back the white fairy. Chapter 2251 Untitled. Chapter 2251 Untitled. With the white fairy guarding the courtyard, if anyone tried to invade her home again, they could go to hell. While Feng Wu was placating her mother, Lady Gu and Feng Qi finally recovered from their initial shock. Lady Gu looked from Feng Wu to Qiuling and said, You're Xiao Wu, then, who's that? Lady Gu, I'm Qiuling. Lady Gu had seen Qiuling before, but she just couldn't believe it. Because Qiuling had exerted so much power in that kick. Are you really Qiuling? You're so capable now. Lady Gu didn't know how she should treat Qiuling now. It pained Feng Wu to see how scared her mother was. The beautiful lady had fallen ill years ago and had lost both her memory and her cultivation ability. She behaved like a 5-year-old and was frightened by all the fighting. Feng Wu told Qiuling, "Finish it outside and be quick about it." Having been with Feng Wu for so many years, Qiuling was no longer frightened by a nobody like Lady Gu. All the high-ranking officials in court had spoken to her in person and tried to win her to their side. They had all promised her generous rewards. Qiuling turned down every single one of them, saying that she couldn't leave her mistress. In comparison, Lady Gu was almost too petty for her to handle. Unfortunately, Lady Gu and her daughter didn't know that. They still thought of Qiuling as the little maid she used to be. Qiuling stared at the mother and daughter. "You're bothering Miss Wu and my lady. Please come outside." She then headed for the door. Lady Gu was astonished. She looked from Qiuling to Feng Wu and said, "Xiao Wu, aren't you going to say something? Did you hear what your maid said? How can a maid offend us?" "Shut up." Feng Wu frowned. Seeing the look on her face, Qiuling picked up Lady Gu and threw her over the wall. Thump! Lady Gu landed on the other side of the wall. Feng Qi was shocked. What was going on? How could this maid? "Feng Wu, are you an idiot? How could you let a maid?" "Stop talking," said Feng Wu. Qiuling moved again. Thump! This time, Feng Qi and Qingyi were thrown out. Seeing the cold look in Qiuling's eyes, Lady Gu's servants all scattered and ran off. Qiuling shut the front gate and shook her head when she saw the collapsed wall. "Uncle Qiu, do we have any bricks?" The crowd couldn't believe their ears. With what had happened, Qiuling only cared about repairing the wall. Gosh, that was unbelievable. Let's go to the elders. Someone has to keep her under control, Lady Gu said furiously. They couldn't do anything to Qiuling, but the family could. At the same time, Uncle Qiu was equally shocked. Qiuling? He didn't know what to say. That was so incredible. Chapter 2252. Chapter 2252, Untitled. Qiuling had really thrown those people out. They were Lady Gu and her daughter. "Qiuling, how could you?" Uncle Qiu stomped his foot. "They'll come back. You've made so much trouble for Miss Wu and Our Lady." Qiuling wanted to speak, but Uncle Qiu wouldn't let her. By then, Feng Wu had calmed her mother down and put her to bed. She came back out to see Uncle Qiu scolding Qiuling, so she said, "Uncle Qiu, Qiuling did nothing wrong. I told her to do that." Uncle Qiu rolled his eyes at her. "I'm not blind. I can see that." Feng Wu and Qiuling chuckled. Uncle Qiu glared at Qiuling. "Stop laughing. Do you know how much trouble you've caused? We should keep a low profile and slowly build up our strength." "Uncle Qiu," Feng Wu cut him off. "Qiuling is a level 7 spiritual elder now," Uncle Qiu said. "Even so, she's still..." "Wait. Miss Wu, what did you just say? Qiuling is a level 7 spiritual grandmaster now?" Feng Wu laughed. "No, she's much better than that. She's a level 7 spiritual elder." "What?" Uncle Qiu was astonished. Then isn't she more capable than you? How's that even possible? She only took a trip to the grassland." "Miss Wu, are you making fun of me?" Feng Wu shrugged. "You saw it yourself. Qiuling is so amazing. She threw those people out as if they were only sacks of rice." "Miss Wu," Qiuling blushed. Uncle Qiu was thrilled. "A level 7 spiritual elder. Oh my God!" Uncle Qiu was so excited that his mouth twitched. "If that's the case, we don't have to be so humble anymore." Feng Wu was moved by his excitement. In the years that Feng Wu had been without her cultivation ability, it was Uncle Qiu who had protected the family. But he wasn't very capable himself either. Feng Wu knew how hard it had been for him. "Miss Wu, Qiuling is a level 7 spiritual elder now, so you better work hard," Uncle Qiu encouraged Feng Wu. "You need to keep up with her." Qiuling chuckled. Uncle Chio stared at her. Yes, you're so amazing now. Even so, you still have to serve Miss Wu properly. Qiuling said, Of course. Feng Wu said, Uncle Chio, I won't be able to make any more progress for a while, but don't worry. Uncle Chio asked, Why? Feng Wu said, I've made so many advancements recently that my foundation isn't as solid as before. I need to work on that first before I make any more breakthroughs. Otherwise, I'll have a lot of trouble in the future. Uncle Chio didn't understand everything she said, but he heard the many advancements bit. So many advancements? Miss Wu, have you become a level 7 spiritual elder as well? He asked curiously. Qiuling chuckled. What are you talking about? Miss Wu is a spiritual lord now. Chapter 2253, Untitled. Chapter 2253, Untitled. What? Uncle Chio almost jumped to his feet. A spiritual lord? Is that true? Granny Zhao almost cried out in excitement as well. She covered her mouth and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu chuckled. Qiuling is already a level 7 spiritual elder. I have to be better than that, don't I? Uncle Chio asked gingerly, Are you a level 1 spiritual lord? Feng Wu shook her head. Granny Zhao asked, Are you level 2? Feng Wu shook her head again. Uncle Chio asked, Level 3? Still shaking. Level 4. Feng Wu went on shaking her head. Uncle Chio was astonished. Still no? You're even higher than that? Miss Wu, is this real? Feng Wu said grumpily, Why would I lie to you? Then you're… Miss Wu is a level 7 spiritual lord, Qiuling said with a smile. A level 7 spiritual lord? Uncle Chio was so excited that he almost fainted. Really? Miss Wu, is that true? You really are a level 7 spiritual lord? Oh my god! Uncle Chio burst into tears. Things were really looking up for them. Granny Zhao was also in tears. The old lady had always been very tough. Despite her old age, she had never asked for any help. Because of that, Feng Wu had always found her a little distant. At that moment, Feng Wu was so glad that everyone was happy about her new cultivation level. Why should she keep anything from them? She shook her head. I'm not a level 7 spiritual lord. No. Those words almost scared Uncle Chio and Granny Zhao out of their wit. Feng Wu looked at them and said seriously, The others all think that I'm a level 7 spiritual lord, but in fact I'm a level 9 spiritual lord. Those words were like a thunderclap in everyone's ears. Qiuling, Uncle Chio, and Granny Zhao were all astonished. A level 9 spiritual lord? What did that mean? It meant that she was so close to becoming a spiritual king. And what did it mean to be a spiritual king? Northern Feng General, who was stationed on the northern border, was a spiritual king. No one knew what level he was at now, but everyone knew that he had been a spiritual king when he first set out. Miss Wu is only 13 years old. She'll be 14 next year. She's only one level away from the spiritual lord stage. No one else in the Feng clan is nearly as talented as Miss Wu. Feng Wu started asking questions after Uncle Chio and Granny Zhao stopped shouting excitedly. What's going on with Lady Gu? And what about Feng Qi? What's the signature Lady Gu was talking about? Feng Wu looked at Uncle Chio and Granny Zhao. Qiuling and I are much stronger than before and… With a wave of her hand, Feng Wu presented the white fairy. The fairy was less transparent at night, but in the end, she still didn't have a tangible form. What's that? It happened so suddenly. Everyone jumped. They all thought that they were looking at a ghost. Uncle Chio took another look and saw that she didn't have a shadow, which frightened him even more. They wondered where Miss Wu had found such a thing. What was it? Weren't we talking about spiritual kings? Feng Wu pointed at the white fairy with a smile. The white fairy here is a spiritual king. The white fairy rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. For now. Her cultivation level dropped once she left the tombs, which was why she had fallen to the spiritual king stage. Feng Wu said, "You'll frighten them if you tell them that you're at the spiritual region stage. Keep a low profile, shall we?" The fairy snorted. Feng Wu said, "The white fairy is going to stay here from now on, but she'll be invisible most of the time. You can call for her when there's an emergency, and she'll come out to help you." The white fairy looked exceptionally pale because she had been injured in the battle against Master Zhua. "Are you done?" She glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "Yes." The white fairy nodded. "Don't call me unless it's really important." She disappeared after that. Uncle Chiu and the others were shocked, and it took them a while to recover. "Miss Wu, is the white fairy really a spiritual king?" Uncle Chiu still couldn't believe his ears. Chiuling had become a spiritual elder and Miss Wu a spiritual lord during the trip, and they had even brought back a spiritual king. He almost couldn't recognize the world anymore. Feng Wu said, "Yes. She owes someone a favor, and that person transferred that favor to me. Therefore, she'll protect our family for 100 years. You'll get to know her better. She's not that frightening. She may seem distant, but she's not a bad person." Uncle Chiu couldn't begin to imagine befriending a spiritual king. "Right. Let's get back to what we were talking about. What signature was my aunt talking about?" asked Feng Wu. Uncle Chiu would have kept it from Feng Wu before for her own safety, but now, there was a level 9 spiritual lord and a spiritual king at home. What did that mean? Uncle Chiu knew that he had nothing to worry about anymore. Chapter 2254 Untitled. Chapter 2254 Untitled. Right. Let's get back to what we were talking about. What signature was my aunt talking about? Asked Feng Wu. Uncle Chiu answered the question. That's a long story. Uncle Chiu smiled bitterly. A lot happened after you left, Miss Wu. Granny Zhao and I managed to stop most of them, but there were things that we couldn't do anything about. Your third uncle, who took office in the south, came back to the imperial capital last month. Ever since Lady Gu's return, we've been having a lot of trouble at home. Miss Wu, Lady Gu isn't a nice person. Be careful. Feng Wu nodded. And then, Uncle Chiu said, I'm running errands outside most times, and Granny Zhao takes care of domestic affairs. I think she should be the one to tell you everything. Feng Wu then turned to Granny Zhao. Granny Zhao sighed. Lady Gu was very warm at first and would visit us from time to time. Although your mother never talked, she didn't seem to mind it at all. With time, my lady let her guard down. Lady Gu's son came with her one time, and to be honest, he's a very spoiled child. He ran around the house the whole time, and wanted everything he laid his eyes on. If he couldn't have it, he would start shouting and crying. That time, he wanted something from your room. It was a set of 18 figurines. Granny Zhao gestured at Feng Wu's room. Feng Wu searched her memory. She recalled that the set had been a gift from Yuminji when he left the imperial capital. It had been a moonless night when he left. He had patted her shoulder and beamed at her. Xiao Wu, you're meant to be my wife. Don't get too close to Jun Linyuan, alright? Keep your distance. Get lost. Feng Wu glared at him. Yuminji rubbed his nose and mumbled, You never believe me when I tell you the truth. It had been very windy, and Feng Wu didn't hear him. What did you say? Yuminji looked at her sadly, and he sighed when he saw the confused look on her face. He had then tossed something at her. Take it. What is it? Feng Wu caught it and saw that it was a square box. Yuminji grunted. One day you'll know that I'm the best. He then jumped off the wall and disappeared into the night. Feng Wu called after him, but her voice was lost in the night wind. When she opened the box, she saw that it was a set of clay figurines. They were all the size of her fingers. Feng Wu had counted and saw that there were 18 of them. Miss Wu, Seeing that Feng Wu was lost in thought, Granny Zhao waved her hand in front of her face. Feng Wu looked at her. Granny Zhao asked, "Miss Wu, are you all right?" Feng Wu nodded and said, "Keep going." Granny Zhao nodded and went on. Chapter 2255, Untitled. Chapter 2255, Untitled. Lady Gu's son came with her to Fallen Star Yard. Because Lady Gu has always been very friendly, we let our guard down. Granny Zhao grew angry. "Miss Wu, we locked your room after you left." Feng Wu nodded. Granny Zhao said, "But your cousin picked the lock, opened your door, and broke one of the figurines on the table. Your mother was very angry." Feng Wu wasn't surprised. Her mother cared about her very much. Of course, she was angry. Granny Zhao said, "My lady was so angry that she shook. Young Master Qi was there as well, and he beat up your cousin. Young Master Qi is very capable now. Those people weren't his match." Feng Wu glanced at Granny Zhao, who seemed very proud of her brother. Granny Zhao frowned. "Of course, Lady Gu and your uncle wouldn't have it, so they came back here and wanted to punish young Master Qi." Feng Wu frowned. Jun Linyuan had given Chang San to her, and she had left him in Fallen Star Yard to keep her family safe. What had Chang San been doing? Granny Zhao said, "Qingyi, the one whom Qiuling kicked away, was the guard Lady Gu and Miss Qi brought with them. He almost took apart our Fallen Star Yard. He wanted to take young Master Qi away to punish him." Feng Wu frowned. "Where was Chang San? I haven't seen him since I came back." Master Chang stepped in and beat up Qingyi. He nearly hit Lady Gu and Miss Qi as well. Master Chang threatened them, saying that he would break their legs if they returned. He was quite scary. Feng Wu nodded. "It's his job to guard Fallen Star Yard. What happened next?" Granny Zhao sounded concerned. "We thought that Lady Gu would stop trying after that, but someone tried to invade Fallen Star Yard at night, and Master Chang went after them. That was a few days ago, and he hasn't come back yet. I don't know what happened to him. Had someone deliberately lured him away?" Feng Wu decided that she would go to Jun Linyuan and find Chang San after everything settled down. Her family was her priority. "Go on." Feng Wu grabbed a chair and had Granny Zhao sit down. Qiuling had made them some tea. Although she was a level 7 spiritual elder and a rising star, she still behaved like an ordinary maid. Granny Zhao said, "Once Master Chang left, we were defenseless. Lady Gu got wind of it and came back. This time, she brought with her the elders of the clan. Although the Feng clan was no longer what it used to be, many elders still thought very highly of themselves." Granny Zhao said, "The elders were on Lady Gu's side and kept saying that young Master Qi needed to be disciplined. Otherwise, he would grow up just like." Chapter 2256, Feng Wu is angry. Chapter 2256, Feng Wu is angry. "Just like me." Feng Wu smirked. Granny Zhao said, "Yes, that was what they said. They wanted to take young Master Qi away, and your mother wouldn't let them. Things got very chaotic. In the end, Lady Gu said that if your mother signed an apology letter, she would forgive your brother." Feng Wu said, "What apology letter? Wasn't a spoken apology enough?" Granny Zhao said, "That was what we said, but Lady Gu said that without a written letter, you might not acknowledge it when you came back. Your mother had to sign the letter, otherwise they would take away your brother, flog him, and put him in confinement. Your mother was frightened. She couldn't stand the idea of confinement and almost lost it. Lady Gu caught her off guard and put your mother's thumbprint on the paper. After that, Lady Gu looked very pleased. She said that she would start preparations." Feng Wu asked, "What preparations?" Granny Zhao slapped herself. "We only learned the day before yesterday that it wasn't an apology letter. It was a marriage agreement." Feng Wu's eyes widened. "What marriage agreement?" Granny Zhao shook with anger. "It was a trap. Lady Gu wanted to marry your mother to some other man. What? Feng Wu was furious. How dare they try to do that to her dear beautiful mother? She wanted to cut off Lady Gu's head. Who is the lucky man? Feng Wu smirked. Her mother was so beautiful that even the emperor was tempted, let alone other men. But if her mother didn't want to remarry, no one could force her. Granny Zhao said gingerly, "He's not just any man." Feng Wu snorted. "I'd like to see how special he is." "He's Lord Gu of Yongxing Manor," Granny Zhao said. Feng Wu asked, "As in Lady Gu's family?" Granny Zhao nodded. Feng Wu said, "If I remember correctly, Lord Gu has a wife already." Lord Gu was Lady Gu's brother. Granny Zhao nodded. "He does. Your mother isn't going to be his wife." "What the heck?" Feng Wu stared at Granny Zhao. "That son of a bitch wants my mother to be his concubine?" Granny Zhao nodded, looking humiliated. Feng Wu smashed a chair into pieces. She headed for the door. Qiuling asked, "Miss Wu, where are you going?" Feng Wu didn't answer. Qiuling said, "Miss Wu, aren't you always telling us that we should think carefully before we take action?" Feng Wu smiled coldly. "Think carefully? I'll do that after I kill her." This was unacceptable. Lady Gu had crossed the line. Chapter 2257 Let's Run. Chapter 2257 Let's Run. With Feng Wu's capability now, of course, she wouldn't endure such humiliation. Granny Zhao and Uncle Qiu were shocked. Kill her. Did Feng Wu want to kill Lady Gu? Seeing that Feng Wu was heading for the door, they immediately went after her and grabbed her arms. Uncle Qiu said, "Miss Wu, you can't. She's your aunt. You can't kill her." Granny Zhao said, "Miss Wu, what will other people say about you if you kill her? Don't do it. Miss Feng Lu has said worse things, but you still let her live." "Miss Feng Lu is dead," Qiuling said in a low voice. "Miss Feng Lu is so much more arrogant than Lady Gu." "What?" Granny Zhao turned to Qiuling and asked, "What did you say?" Qiuling announced the breaking news in a flat voice. "Miss Feng Lu is dead." "What?" Uncle Qiu and Granny Zhao were astonished. Ever since they came back, Feng Lu had been giving them a hard time. She wouldn't stop creating trouble for them, and Granny Zhao was so angry at her. But she was still shocked to hear that she was dead. "Miss Feng Lu is dead? How? Did someone kill her?" asked Granny Zhao. Qiuling nodded. Granny Zhao sighed. "Miss Feng Lu is so unbridled that it was only a matter of time before she got herself killed, but I didn't expect the day to come so soon. Whoever did it will be in big trouble. Her parents are very difficult to handle. They'll find a way to get their revenge. They won't care about the consequences." By the way, Granny Zhao asked Qiuling, "Who was bold enough to kill Miss Feng Lu?" Qiuling glanced at Feng Wu but didn't reply. Granny Zhao thought that Qiuling didn't dare to tell her because the person was too terrifying. "Miss Wu, you must know who that person is." Uncle Qiu and Granny Zhao were so curious. Feng Wu sounded perfectly calm when she said, "Me?" Granny Zhao said, "Miss Wu, please tell us. We'll set up a little shrine for that person." Feng Wu rolled her eyes at her. "I told you already. It was me." Granny Zhao couldn't believe her ears. "Miss Wu, what are you talking about? You can't joke about such things. Even if it's true, you should really keep your voice down. If someone hears you..." Feng Wu looked at her. "Everyone out there knows that I was the one who killed Feng Lu." "Sss." Granny Zhao drew in her breath. "Everyone?" Feng Wu nodded. Granny Zhao trembled with fear. She was just a servant. Despite her tough look, she still revered her masters. When she heard that Feng Wu had killed Feng Lu, she felt a chill run down her spine. Oh no! Feng Yanfeng was the head of the family, and Feng Wu had killed his daughter. "Miss Wu, run!" Granny Zhao said nervously. "Let's pack our things now and go back to the northern border. We'll never come back." Old Chiu, get the carriage. Chapter 2258 Attack. Chapter 2258 Attack. Sure. Uncle Chiu turned to fetch the carriage. Feng Wu said, Stop. Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu looked at her in bewilderment. Feng Wu said, So what if I killed Feng Lu? Uncle Chiu said, Miss Wu, don't say that. Miss Lu is your uncle's favorite daughter. Lady Wang will want to kill you. Feng Wu smiled. Kill me? I'd like to see them try. Uncle Chiu was stunned. That was true. Even Feng Yanfeng wasn't Miss Wu's match anymore, but Feng Wu stopped trying to persuade them. She needed her anger for Lady Gu. That woman tried to marry her mother off when she was away. How dare she? Feng Wu uprooted a tall tree on the way and carried it on her shoulder. Granny Zhao, Uncle Chiu, and Qiuling all followed her. They were speechless when they saw the 5-meter tree. Granny Zhao asked Qiuling, Aren't you going to talk Miss Wu out of it? Qiuling said, Miss Wu is always right. If something is wrong, it must be someone else's fault. Granny Zhao smacked her own forehead. How could she have forgotten what Qiuling was like? She would support Feng Wu no matter what. Granny Zhao said, Should we go to Lady Wang? Uncle Chiu said, Miss Wu just killed her daughter. They'll never help us. Granny Zhao didn't know what to say. She couldn't understand why Feng Wu would confront her third uncle's family when she had already offended her first uncle. Uncle Chiu said calmly, Don't worry. Miss Wu is invincible in this manner now. As long as the elders don't intervene, everything will be fine. But no one knew if those old men would stay out of it. The family clan used to be one of the major clans, so they did have some very capable members. Feng Wu moved very fast and soon reached Waveyard, where the third branch of the clan lived. Several servants were outside, and among them was Granny Ding, the guard of the place. She didn't recognize Feng Wu at first, but she knew Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu. She frowned and scolded them. Granny Zhao, what's this? Are you invading Waveyard now? Granny Zhao and Granny Ding had been bought by the Feng clan at the same time, and the two of them had a competitive relationship. When the third branch of the clan rose to power, Granny Ding began to look down upon Granny Zhao. Before Granny Zhao could say anything, Granny Ding smirked and said, Who's this girl? And why does she have a tree? We don't need more trees here. Granny Zhao, I heard that your lady is about to marry into the Gu family, and you won't have a family to serve anymore. If you beg me, maybe I can go talk to Lady Gu, and she'll keep you here as a cleaner. She started laughing. Around her were a few low-level teenage maids, and they all laughed with her. The servants were divided into different levels as well. Granny Zhao was a senior maid of the beautiful lady, but Granny Ding wanted to turn her into a cleaner. How humiliating! Chapter 2259 Untitled. Chapter 2259 Untitled. Granny Ding laughed so hard that she was in tears. She said, I said so 5 years ago when Miss Wu lost her ability. I told you that you should work for Lady Gu, but what did you say? You said that Miss Wu would recover. What about now? Where's your Miss Wu? Here. Feng Wu put down the tree and stared at Granny Ding. Only then did Granny Ding recognize her. Her stomach lurched. After all, Feng Wu had just heard what she said about her. But she didn't think much of it because she still believed that Feng Wu was a good-for-nothing who lived more miserably than a maid. At that thought, Granny Ding began to scold Feng Wu as if the girl was a low-level servant. Here you are, Miss Wu. You do look pretty, but your behavior is so... She glanced at Feng Wu. Where are your manners? What are you doing with that tree? No young lady should behave as rudely as this. If people outside hear about this, they'll think that Miss Qi is as bad as you are. Granny Ding sounded so arrogant, but she didn't get to finish. Smack! Feng Wu's tree jabbed her in the stomach. The impact sent her flying backward. Thump! There was a loud noise. Granny Ding smashed into the front gate of Waveyard and knocked the doors open. Ah! Granny Ding was too weak to speak, but the low-level maids nearby all screamed in fear. They all looked at Feng Wu in astonishment and didn't know how to react. Was she the good-for-nothing that Granny Ding had been talking about? Was she the useless cousin that Miss Chi despised? How could she be a good-for-nothing? When the doors were forced open, several guards charged out. They all held weapons. The leader was Steward Ding, Granny Ding's husband. Granny Ding pointed at Feng Wu and said, "Miss Wu has lost her mind. Catch her and kill her." She was only a servant, but she wanted to kill her master. That was how arrogant the third branch of the clan was. Feng Wu smirked. A mere servant wanted to kill her now. How interesting. Steward Ding shouted, "Miss Wu is crazy. Take her down now. If she resists, kill her." "Yes," the guards answered. They thought that it would be a very easy job. However, they soon learned the truth. Thump, thump, thump. Feng Wu struck out with the tree. With every move, a man fell. And when she swept it through the air, she knocked several men over. With only 3 strikes, she defeated over a dozen guards. They all rolled over the ground and wailed. Chapter 2260, Untitled. Chapter 2260, Untitled. With only 3 strikes, she defeated over a dozen guards. They all rolled over the ground and wailed. Granny Ding and Steward Ding watched this in disbelief. Oh God! That was so terrifying. Miss Wu had defeated all of them with a mere tree. It was as if the guards were made of paper. Granny Ding sat on the ground, her face drained of all color. Steward Ding was the same. Isn't Miss Wu a cripple? Why was she so capable? Lady Gu's husband had paid a lot of money for these guards. They were all spiritual elders. Steward Ding couldn't tell what Feng Wu's level was, because Feng Wu had hidden her cultivation level with the concealing jade. Before they could do anything, Feng Wu marched into Waveyard with the tree over her shoulder. Miss Wu! Miss Wu! Steward Ding wanted to stop her, but Feng Wu smashed him into the wall with the tree. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was too weak to do anything. My dear cousin, what's this? Feng Chi walked into the yard. She was relieved when she saw that Qiuling wasn't with Feng Wu. She still thought that Qiuling was the more capable one and that Feng Wu was still useless. Tell your mother to come out. Feng Wu sat down on a chair in the main hall, and the tree almost pierced the roof. Feng Chi frowned. Are you invading my home now? How hilarious. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and repeated, Tell your mother to come out. Feng Chi sat down on a chair nearby and sipped on a cup of tea. Or what? I'd love to know. Are you going to tear up this place? As a matter of fact, Lady Gu wasn't in. She was with Lady Wang in Flying Snow Building. Right now, she was holding Lady Wang's hand as she cried, Sister-in-law, you've come back just in time. Please help me. Feng Yanfeng had his own business to handle and wasn't at home. Only Lady Wang and her Granny Gui were there. Granny Gui made some tea for Lady Gu. Granny Gui resented Feng Wu's family. Because Feng Wu was on the rise now, she naturally wanted Lady Wang and Lady Gu to become allies. Lady Wang felt the same. She held Lady Gu's hands and said softly, What's wrong, sister-in-law? Feel free to tell me. I'll do everything I can to help you. Is it my brother-in-law? Hearing that, Lady Gu immediately smiled. No, my husband is really kind to me. It's about the second branch of the clan. Come to think of it, Feng Wu's father has been missing for many years, hasn't he? To this clan, he's as good as dead. Chapter 2261, Untitled. Chapter 2261, Untitled. Lady Wang said, That's right. After so many years, there's no way that he's still alive. Otherwise, he would have come back by now. Lady Gu said, In that case, Did I do anything wrong when I tried to find his wife another husband? Those words shocked Lady Wang. A new husband for Feng Wu's beautiful mother. Granny Gui almost spilled her tea. Lady Gu had no idea what a terrifying declaration she had just made. She took Lady Wang's hand and said, "It's not just some random man. My brother fancies the lady and wants to marry her." Lady Wang frowned. "Wait a minute. Your brother, as in Lord Gu? Doesn't he have a wife already? I saw her only a few months ago. Has she passed away?" Lady Gu said, "Of course not. That lady is a widow. Of course no one will want her as an official wife. She's going to be my brother's concubine." Lady Wang couldn't believe her ears. A concubine? The beautiful lady? Did she have any idea how much Feng Wu cared for her mother? Lady Wang still remembered the last time when she said something unpleasant about the lady, and Feng Wu had almost killed her. Moreover, according to her husband, Feng Wu was already a level 7 spiritual lord. When she rose to level 9, she might become a lord herself. Lady Gu finally saw the strange look in Lady Wang's eyes, so she asked, "Sister-in-law, what's wrong?" Lady Wang was going to explain, when she saw Granny Gui shake her head. An idea struck Lady Wang. That was it. Feng Wu had killed Feng Lu, and that was something she would never forgive her for. However, her husband had also ordered her to leave Feng Wu alone. What if someone else could kill Feng Wu? Lady Gu came from the Gu family, which was one of the 10 major clans. Feng Wu would be in a lot of trouble if she offended that family. At that thought, she cleared her throat to cover her embarrassment. Well, the Gu family is very prestigious, and Lord Gu is the heir. Becoming his concubine would be a great honor. Lady Wang hid her true feelings. That's so true. Lady Wang smacked her thigh. That's what I said. That lady thought the same. What? That beautiful idiot agreed? You've got to be kidding me, thought Lady Wang. Lady Gu took out a letter and showed it to Lady Wang. Look. Here's the marriage agreement and here's the thumbprint. Lady Wang found the letter suspicious. That idiot wouldn't trust anyone except Feng Wu. There's something behind this letter, I'm sure of it, she thought to herself. But she didn't mind the plot. She would love to see Feng Wu and the Gu family scratch each other's eyes out. At that thought, she feigned a pleased tone. This is great news. Chapter 2262, Untitled. Chapter 2262, Untitled. Lady Gu said, "Sister-in-law, I'm glad to hear that you're on my side, but Xiao Wu was so angry, as if I was trying to harm her mother. It's so hard to be a good person these days." Lady Wang smirked inwardly. You're trying to marry her mother off as a concubine. With Feng Wu's temper, she's going to tear down your wave yard. She was still pondering over the idea, when Granny Ding arrived in a hurry. Lady Gu, something has happened. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was asking Feng Qi, so, your mother isn't going to come out, is she? Feng Qi said in an unhurried tone, My dear cousin, do you know what level I'm at? I'm a level 1 spiritual elder. At my age, the elders all say that I'm making much faster progress than my brother. I'm the future of the Feng clan. And you, she glanced at Feng Wu and raised her chin, you're just a useless girl who has just retrieved a little bit of your ability. How dare you? Thump! Before she could finish, Feng Wu had smashed the tree in her hands into the wall. Rumble! That immediately crushed over half of the wall. Feng Qi stared at Feng Wu in disbelief and shouted, How dare you damage my home? I'm going to kill you. However, she didn't have much time to do anything. Thump! Feng Wu struck down at Feng Qi's head. Whoosh! Just like Steward Ding, Feng Qi was thrown into the wall, crushing the remaining half of it. Stop! Stop her! She'll destroy the whole courtyard! In that critical moment, everyone came out to save the courtyard. That included the men the master of the house had hired, as well as the servants whom Lady Gu had brought here when she married. They were all very capable. But that was only relatively speaking. For ordinary people, becoming a spiritual master was already a big achievement. The top-level guards could only be spiritual grandmasters. Feng Wu's uncle couldn't afford spiritual lords yet. Therefore, thump, 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 Feng Wu quickly swept the tree through the air. Whoosh! She knocked every single person to the ground. Feng Qi's eyes widened. That's not possible. She couldn't think straight anymore. How was this possible? Didn't everyone say that Feng Wu was useless? Wasn't she supposed to have lost her cultivation skills? How could she defeat all these spiritual grandmasters? Feng Qi still believed that she had the greatest potential in the younger generation. Why was Feng Wu so powerful? Just then, Feng Wu leaped up and smashed down at a wall. Feng Wu! Stop! Feng Qi bellowed. That was a load-bearing wall. If that wall went down, the entire courtyard would collapse. Miss Qi, run! At that critical moment, Steward Ding dragged Feng Qi out. All the guards scrambled to their feet and ran for their lives. Those that couldn't run tried their best to crawl away. Quickly! Run! Rumble! It was as if lightning had struck down. The two-story building was crushed by Feng Wu's tree. Chapter 2263, Untitled. Chapter 2263, Untitled. Some people ran faster and managed to get out. But the ones that moved slower were almost all buried under the debris. Feng Qi watched in disbelief. No, this can't be happening. Feng Qi's face was covered with sweat, tears, and dust. Her hair and clothes were disheveled, and she looked nothing like the noble young lady she was supposed to be. When Lady Gu rushed back after receiving the information, she was just in time to see Feng Wu's last strike. She was shocked by Feng Wu's fury. When she saw the collapsed walls, she was almost scared out of her wits. The tree had also fallen to pieces after Feng Wu destroyed the courtyard. Feng Qi ran toward her mother in fright. Mother! Lady Gu held Feng Qi in her arms and told Granny Ding in a trembling voice, "Go get Lady Wang and the masters. Quickly!" Feng Wu remained where she was and kept her cold gaze on Lady Gu. Lady Gu was no fool. With the power Feng Wu had exerted, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. She pushed Feng Qi behind her and marched toward Feng Wu. Wave Yard was destroyed, and that was a great humiliation for Lady Gu. She was the daughter of one of the 10 major clans and had never been humiliated like this before. She walked up to Feng Wu and raised her hand, trying to slap her. "You little bastard!" But it had never occurred to her that she wouldn't be able to treat Feng Wu the same way as she treated her husband's concubines. Before she could even touch Feng Wu, the girl had raised her right leg. Thump! Lady Gu realized in astonishment that she was flying backward. Feng Wu had just kicked her in the stomach. Smack! Lady Gu smashed into a pile of debris and spat out a mouthful of blood. How formidable! Feng Wu had just kicked Lady Gu without hesitation. Seeing this, no one dared to make any reckless moves anymore. Even Feng Qi was stunned. The look in Feng Wu's eyes when she stared at Lady Gu reminded Feng Qi of the god of death. She used to be the miracle girl 5 years ago. Then, she had to hide her true capability. Today, she could finally reveal herself. The unbridled genius was back. The lower hem of her dress flapped in the night wind, accentuating her intimidating demeanor. The look in her eyes gave Lady Gu the creep. "I'm your aunt. A senior member of the family. How dare you attack me? You've broken the rule of the clan. You're dead." Lady Gu gritted her teeth. As a daughter of the Gu family, she refused to be intimidated. Feng Wu reached out to her with an open palm. "Give it to me." Lady Gu smirked. "I don't know what you mean." Feng Wu snorted. She then made a beckoning gesture at Feng Qi. Feng Qi, who had considered herself to be a formidable level 1 spiritual elder, couldn't believe it when an invisible power dragged her toward Feng Wu. Feng Wu stomped on Feng Qi's right hand without hesitation. Arg! Chapter 2264 Feng Wu the Ruler 1. Chapter 2264 Feng Wu the Ruler 1. Feng Wu stomped on Feng Qi's right hand without hesitation. Arg! Lady Gu couldn't believe her eyes. She screamed at Feng Wu, "Have you lost your mind?" She had never expected Feng Wu to be so heartless. Feng Qi was her cousin. Feng Qi felt every bone in her right hand break. In a split second, her hand was red and swollen, making for quite a terrifying sight. Feng Qi almost passed out, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She had lived such an indulgent life, and had never imagined such pain. The humiliation almost broke her. Feng Wu sneered at Lady Gu. "Give it back." Lady Gu wouldn't have it. She believed that a daughter of the Gu family should never give in. Therefore, she didn't take out the letter, but said angrily, "Feng Wu, that is enough. I'm doing your mother a favor." But before she could finish, Feng Wu stomped her foot again. Arg! Feng Qi screamed. It was so painful. Feng Wu stepped on her left hand this time, and it was as swollen as the right one. Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu exchanged glances, and both saw complicated feelings in each other's eyes. What Feng Wu did was the most satisfying thing. But what about later? How would this end? Lady Gu would never let anyone intimidate her, especially now that her brother had promised her that once he had the beautiful lady, he would give Lady Gu's husband a promotion. Therefore, Lady Gu decided that under no circumstances would she give that letter to Feng Wu. Still no? That's very thorough of you. Feng Wu smirked, picked up Feng Qi and walked away. Where are you taking her? Lady Gu panicked. Feng Wu ignored her and told Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao, "Let's go." She had remained very calm and knew that if she broke into a fight here, Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao would become collateral damage, but things would be very different if she made Fallen Star Yard the battlefield. She had set up a formation there. Once it was activated, it would be very difficult for an outsider to break in. Feng Wu dragged Feng Qi all the way back to Fallen Star Yard as if she was a ragged doll. Lady Gu chased her there as well. "Where's Granny Wang? Tell her to come back right now." Lady Gu was almost in tears. She had sent Granny Wang to her brother's residence to deliver the letter. She had to have that letter on hand so that she could give it to Feng Wu as a last resort. "I'll go after her." Steward Ding immediately scrambled to his feet and dashed off. What he didn't know was that the overexcited Granny Wang had been urging the carriage to go faster. Therefore, when Steward Ding caught up with her, she was already leaving Lord Gu's residence. Steward Ding asked, "Where is the letter?" Granny Wang said, "I've already handed it over." Steward Ding asked, "Who did you give it to?" Granny Wang said, "I was going to give it to Mrs. Gu, but Lord Gu was there, so he took it." Chapter 2265 Feng Wu the Ruler 2. Chapter 2265 Feng Wu the Ruler 2. Steward Ding was terrified. Things wouldn't be too difficult if Mrs. Gu had the letter, but it was in Lord Gu's hands, and he was a very scary person. Meanwhile, in the Feng clan, Feng Wu had left Feng Qi in a corner, and she leaned against a broken wall. Qiuling had partly destroyed the wall when she kicked Qingyi earlier, and they hadn't repaired it yet. Feng Qi's face was twisted with hatred. Despite her predicament, Feng Qi still threatened Feng Wu. "Feng Wu, I'm warning you. Release me now." Feng Wu didn't even look at her as she went on writing inscriptions on an iron pole. Her inscription skills had improved again, and she would soon be a level 8 inscription master. Feng Qi took a deep breath and glared at Feng Wu. "You probably don't know what a dangerous thing you're doing right now. Yes, you have your cultivation ability back and you're even a little bit better than me, but so what? No one in this clan is on your side. Your mother is an imbecile. She can't help you, No one knows if she has a family, because your grandparents have never shown up. But judging by your mother's condition, she can't be from an influential family. Feng Wu, you're on your own. No matter how tough you are, you're still useless. Have you forgotten about my mother's family? Even if the Feng family won't do anything, the Gu family will get revenge for us. Do you know who the Gu family is? We're one of the 10 major clans, and my uncle is a lord. He's one of the most influential people in the empire. I'm warning you. Let me go now, or when the Gu family comes, they'll wipe out your entire family. Feng Wu, you better be smart. Even now, Feng Qi was still as proud as a peacock. Feng Wu worked quickly on the inscriptions. When Feng Qi finished, she also finished painting the iron pole. She told Qiuling, tie her up there. Qiuling never questioned Feng Wu's orders. She picked up Feng Qi and tied her onto the pole without any difficulty. Feng Wu clapped her hands, and the iron pole stood up in the middle of Fallen Star Yard. Ah! Feng Qi screamed in terror. Because Feng Wu began to pull her up the pole the way one would hoist a flag. Feng Wu, you're dead. I'm going to kill you. Humiliated, Feng Qi went on threatening Feng Wu. But Feng Wu simply ignored her. Granny Zhao and Uncle Qiu stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. They were already shocked when Feng Wu destroyed Waveyard, but now she had taken Feng Qi hostage and was hanging her up on a pole. To make it worse, the pole was swaying in the wind. Because the wall of Fallen Star Yard was broken, people outside could see what was going on. Lady Gu arrived at that moment. Chapter 2266, Feng Wu the Ruler, 3. Chapter 2266, Feng Wu the Ruler, 3. Lady Gu arrived in time to see her beloved daughter dangling in midair. Feng Qi screamed like a pig being slaughtered while Feng Wu sat in the courtyard, sipping some wine. Lady Gu cried out and immediately tried to run into Fallen Star Yard. But, thump! What she didn't know was that Fallen Star Yard was protected by a formation. They hadn't used it on her before because they hadn't treated her as an enemy then. But now, the formation had been activated. Lady Gu ran into the formation and rebounded from the impact. Thump! Her forehead quickly red and swollen. It hurt. She felt dizzy and almost lost her balance. This is outrageous. Lady Gu had never felt so frustrated before. For the first time, she didn't know what to do. Where's my husband? Go find him. And bring Lady Wang here. And Master Feng Yanfeng as well. Isn't he the head of the clan? He needs to take care of this. No matter how many times Lady Gu tried, she couldn't do anything about the formation. Granny Ding said, "My lady, your husband isn't at home, and we can't get in touch with him yet, nor can we find Master Feng Yanfeng. But Lady Wang is still in Flying Snow Building. Go get her. She's the only one who has the authority now." Lady Gu shouted. Granny Ding immediately went to Flying Snow Building. In fact, Lady Wang had already received the news. Granny Gui was reporting to her in a calm voice, "My lady, Miss Wu and the Third Branch are at war now." Lady Wang sipped her tea and said, "So what? It's not like Feng Wu will tear their house apart." Granny Gui said, "My lady, that's exactly what she did." Lady Wang's eyes widened. "What?" Granny Gui couldn't hide the satisfaction in her tone. She then described how Feng Wu had charged into Waveyard and taken it apart. Lady Wang was shocked. Is that girl really so bold? On second thought, Lady Wang realized that Feng Wu had always been so bold. She had killed Feng Lu after all. Granny Gui didn't know what Lady Wang was thinking and went on in an excited tone. Not only did Miss Wu crush Miss Qi's hands, she also snatched her and told Lady Gu she would exchange her for the marriage letter. Lady Wang was thrilled. If Feng Qi also died, she wouldn't feel so sad for her own daughter. Granny Gui, if Feng Wu really gets Feng Qi killed. Granny Ding arrived at that moment. Lady Wang couldn't refuse to go, but she took her time. Fallen Star Yard. Lady Gu took Lady Wang's hands and cried, "Sister-in-law, are you seeing this? Not only did Feng Wu destroy my wave yard, she also took my daughter. Has she lost her mind? You have to help me." Lady Wang saw Feng Qi dangling on the pole and felt a little satisfied. She was a good actor, however, so she walked toward the courtyard and said loudly, "Xiao Wu, listen to me. Put your cousin down." Feng Wu ignored her. Chapter 2267 Feng Wu the Ruler 4. Chapter 2267 Feng Wu the Ruler 4. Lady Wang turned to Lady Gu and said in resignation, "That girl has always been so willful. What should we do now? We can't let Xiao Qi stay up there. She'll get hurt." Lady Gu stared at Lady Wang in disbelief. Being the wife of the head of the clan, Lady Wang had always had a condescending demeanor, and Lady Wang had always respected her. But in this situation, was that all she would do now? "Sister-in-law, order Feng Wu to stop." Lady Gu stared at Lady Wang. With no other choice, Lady Wang had to move closer. The front gate was shut, so she wanted to get in through the broken wall. However, thump! She also bumped into the formation. Luckily, she didn't use much force, so her forehead was only a little red. Lady Wang frowned. Why has the girl activated her formation again? "Xiao Wu, please release your cousin." Feng Wu still ignored her. Lady Wang shrugged and told Lady Gu, "I'm sorry to admit this, but ever since that girl found her patron, she stopped listening to me altogether." "A patron? Who?" Lady Gu frowned. Lady Wang said in a surprised tone, "Do you not know?" Lady Gu asked, "What did I miss?" Lady Wang said, "Everyone has been saying how well His Royal Highness has been treating Feng Wu. He has to be fond of her and wants to marry her." Lady Gu stared at Lady Wang in disbelief. "Sister-in-law, have you been at home for too long? How can you believe such rumors?" Lady Wang feigned an innocent tone. "What do you mean?" Lady Gu smirked. "I've heard that rumor as well, but the version I heard was that His Royal Highness only treats Feng Wu as a bedwarming maid. She's not even a concubine, let alone will she marry the Crown Prince. To His Royal Highness, Feng Wu is no better than a pet. Sister-in-law, you put too much confidence in her." Lady Wang said deliberately, "But I heard." Lady Gu waved her off. "I asked my brother's wife, and she told me so. It has to be true. Just use your common sense. His Royal Highness would never fall in love with Feng Wu." "Is that so?" Lady Wang pretended to be persuaded, but she was laughing inwardly. Seeing Lady Wang's attitude, Lady Gu knew that her sister-in-law wouldn't be of much help, so she sent more people to find her husband and Feng Yanfeng. Meanwhile, Lady Wang hinted to her own servants that they shouldn't bring the news to Feng Yanfeng. That way, the war between Feng Wu and Lady Gu would last longer. Granny Gui took the hint and walked away. Meanwhile, Lady Gu's husband was on his way. His name was Feng Yenya. He had just come back from a dinner party held by his colleague. It had been a pleasant night until Steward Ding found him halfway and told him to hurry back home. When Steward Ding told him what happened, Feng Yenya was amused. "Nonsense. Wave Yard was taken apart and Xiao Qi was taken away by that useless Feng Wu? You've got to be kidding me." He didn't believe a word Steward Ding said. Steward Ding was almost in tears. He didn't know how to persuade Feng Yenya, so he had to lead him to Wave Yard. Feng Yenya was speechless. "Lady Gu and the others are all at Fallen Star Yard now," a servant reported to Feng Yenya. Chapter 2268 Feng Wu the Ruler 5. Chapter 2268 Feng Wu the Ruler 5. Feng Yenya immediately headed for Fallen Star Yard. He looked like a volcano that was ready to erupt. How dare that useless Feng Wu do this? Who does she think she is? His rage reached its peak when he arrived at Fallen Star Yard. Master! Panic-stricken, Lady Gu had been staring nervously at Feng Qi, who was swaying on the iron pole like a flag. It just so happened that she was wearing a colorful dress today, which made her look even more like a flag. Where's Qi? Where's my daughter? Feng Yinya shouted. She's there. Lady Gu pointed at the flag in midair. Feng Qi saw her father from afar and shouted, Father! Help me! Kill Feng Wu! Feng Yinya glared at Lady Gu. Lady Gu immediately said, It was Feng Wu. She put Qi there. Feng Yinya turned to look at Fallen Star Yard. Through the gap in the broken wall, he could see Feng Wu casually sipping her wine, which enraged him even more. He charged at her, wanting to snatch her and hang her up on the pole. But, watch out! Lady Gu shouted, but it was too late. Whoosh! Feng Yinya bumped into the formation. The transparent shield cracked a little, but Feng Yinya's forehead swelled up as well. It looked very painful. Feng Yinya was furious. Damn you! Deactivate this formation right now. Feng Yinya threatened Feng Wu. Feng Wu glanced at him, then ignored him. The way she looked at him made him feel like a clown. You defiant girl! Are your parents all dead? They never taught you anything. They're so useless. Feng Yinya had always been short-tempered, and he didn't exactly choose the right words when he cursed Feng Wu. Feng Wu couldn't care less if he said bad things about her, but he was insulting her parents, and that was something she wouldn't stand for. She narrowed her eyes and gave the pole a quick shove. Thump! The pole was very thin. It bent at the force until the tip almost touched the ground. Feng Wu smirked, looking satisfied. Ah! Feng Qi screamed at the top of her lungs as the pole swayed violently from side to side. Dad! Help me! Feng Yinya was still cursing Feng Wu when this happened. He stared at the pole in disbelief. Lady Gu reacted first. She grabbed Feng Yinya's hand and said, Help our daughter! Feng Yinya was practically spitting flames from his eyes. He leaped into the air in Feng Qi's direction. He wanted to untie her from the pole. However, it wasn't as simple as he imagined. Something happened when he was about to reach Feng Qi. Chapter 2269, His Royal Highness Takes Side 1. Chapter 2269, His Royal Highness Takes Side 1. Something happened when he was about to reach Feng Qi. Feng Wu must have set a trap on Feng Qi, because when Feng Yinya touched Feng Qi, lightning flashed across the sky. There was a crackling noise. Both Feng Yinya and Feng Qi were shocked with electricity. Ah! Feng Qi was almost charred. She shouted in terror, Father, don't touch me! She struggled and tried to kick at Feng Yinya. Feng Yinya wasn't any better. The formation Feng Wu set up had a rule. The greater the impact, the greater the backlash. Feng Yinya had tried to break the formation to save Feng Qi. As a result, the backlash he received was quite severe. The air was filled with a crackling sound. Feng Yinya was covered by sparks and looked quite eye-catching from afar. He fell to the ground with smoke rising from his body. The fall was so painful that he was almost in tears. Master! Master! Lady Gu had never expected something like this to happen. She rushed over in tears and held Feng Yinya in her arms. What happened? Yinya, are you all right? Feng Yinya was burnt from head to toe, and his face was twisted with pain. Before he could speak, a shadow fell over him. Feng Yinya looked up and stared at Feng Wu, who had walked out of the formation. In the moonlight, she had an otherworldly beauty. You! Before Feng Yinya could say anything, Feng Wu said, That's what you get for insulting my parents. Feng Yinya was furious, but he couldn't do anything. Lady Gu glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, are you going to turn the entire family into your enemy? Feng Wu didn't reply. Instead, she looked up at Feng Qi and said casually, "I think it's going to snow." She headed back into the formation after that. What did that mean? Lady Gu was so angry that she couldn't utter a word. Go to hell. Feng Yenya took out the dagger hidden in his sleeve and struck at the back of Feng Wu's head. He was sure that he could kill Feng Wu. But to his surprise, Feng Wu disappeared from sight, and his dagger ended up smashing into the ground. Feng Yenya was speechless. He couldn't understand what had just happened. He was a level 3 spiritual elder. That made him a very capable member of the Feng clan, but now, he couldn't even handle a girl. He began to question his own ability. Yenya, what should we do now? Lady Gu looked from Feng Qi to Feng Yenya and panicked. Let's go back first. Feng Yenya glared at the front gate of Fallen Star Yard. Go back? They didn't have any place to go now. Lady Gu wanted to cry again. Let's go see Lady Wang. Feng Yenya smirked. My brother is the leader of the clan. We'll let him handle it once he comes back. Chapter 2270. His Royal Highness Takes Side 2. Chapter 2270. His Royal Highness Takes Side 2. So, where was Feng Yanfeng now? After work, Feng Yanfeng lingered for a while in a pub until he was half drunk. He then rode back home. When he reached the front gate, a servant rushed out and shouted, Master Feng. Feng Yanfeng was preoccupied and didn't pay much attention to his horse. The horse was startled. It reared up on its hind legs and threw Feng Yanfeng to the ground. Frustrated, Feng Yanfeng wanted to hit the servant, but the latter immediately told him in a low voice, Master Feng, Miss Wu took Wave Yard apart, snatched Miss Qi, and hung her up on a pole. Lady Gu and Master Feng Yenya went to get Miss Qi back, but they were both injured. They are both in flying snow building now, waiting for you to handle it for them. The young servant blurted out everything in one go without pausing for breath. What? It took Feng Yanfeng a while to digest the news. He immediately jumped onto the horse and dashed off. He had no plan to get involved in this mess. Feng Yenya could fight with Feng Wu all he wanted. The next second, he was out of sight. Feng Yenya and Lady Gu grew impatient in flying snow building. Granny Gui came back at that moment and brought news of Feng Yanfeng. His Majesty has summoned Master Feng Yanfeng, and he probably won't come back tonight. Lady Gu was worried sick. My brother-in-law isn't avoiding us, is he? Lady Wang smiled wryly. Sister-in-law, what are you talking about? If His Majesty has summoned him, it has to be important. Lady Gu ignored her. She gritted her teeth and told her husband, wait here. I'll get someone from my family. If the Feng family won't take care of it, the Gu family will. She dashed off after that. Gosh, sister-in-law, wait. Lady Wang pretended to run after her, but soon stopped. Seeing Lady Gu disappear into the distance, Lady Wang smiled in satisfaction. Lord Yongxing's residence. Brother! Brother! Lady Gu rushed into the house. Unfortunately, Lord Gu wasn't there, but Mrs. Gu was. She hadn't heard about the incident, and greeted Lady Gu with a smile. Why the rush? Do you need anything? Just talk to me. Lady Gu hesitated a little. She was trying to find a new concubine for her brother, but here was her sister-in-law. However, she soon made up a story. Sister-in-law! Lady Gu burst into tears. The Feng family is outrageous. They're abusing my daughter. It was just bickering between two cousins, but Feng Wu. Seeing how sad Lady Gu was, Mrs. Gu was convinced that someone had mistreated Lady Gu. When Mrs. Gu married into the Gu family, Lady Gu had only been 5 years old. To Mrs. Gu, Lady Gu was like a daughter. She immediately said, Don't cry. Tell me everything. You're a daughter of the Gu family and as prestigious as a princess. No one can disrespect you. Lady Gu cried even harder. She told Mrs. Gu a story about how Feng Wu had bullied Feng Qi, and didn't mention a word about a new concubine. Chapter 2271 His Royal Highness Takes Side 3. Chapter 2271 His Royal Highness Takes Side 3. What? As expected, Mrs. Gu was enraged by the story. How could she destroy your home over a petty quarrel? And did you say that she hung Shao Qi up like a flag? This is outrageous. Does she think that she can do such things without being punished? How dare that Feng Wu? Lady Gu smirked. Doesn't she have His Royal Highness as her patron? Mrs. Gu said, That's not true at all. She's just using His Royal Highness's reputation to abuse other people. Mrs. Gu had noticed that Lord Gu had been distancing himself from her lately, and she had been trying to do something to impress him. She saw this incident as the opportunity she needed. Zhong Yi, what are your levels now? She asked 2 guards. Zhong said, I'm a level 4 spiritual lord. Yi said, so am I. Mrs. Gu nodded. Take some servants with you and go to the Feng family. I'd like to see what that girl can do. To her, a level 4 spiritual lord was more capable than she could imagine. Just like Lady Gu, she thought that 2 such guards would be more than enough to handle Feng Wu. Hence, Lady Gu thanked her sister-in-law and led the large group of people back to the Feng family. While she was on her way back, to show her enthusiasm, Lady Wang had been waiting for Lady Gu outside the front gate. Seeing Lady Gu come back, Lady Wang feigned a concerned tone and said, Sister-in-law, you've brought back so many people. Are you sure about this? Lady Wang felt a little sorry. Were things going to end so soon? She hadn't had enough fun yet. Lady Gu was very excited. She took Lady Wang's hands and said, Sister-in-law, I've brought these capable men from my family. Zhong and Yi here are both captains of the guard. Lady Wang praised Zhong and Yi. Lady Gu said, They're both level 4 spiritual lords. I'd like to see the look on Feng Wu's face. Lady Wang gave Lady Gu a strange look. Lady Gu was perplexed. Sister-in-law, what's wrong? You're not worried about Feng Wu, are you? Don't worry. I won't kill her. She then clenched her fists and said, She'll just wish that she was dead. In your dreams, thought Lady Wang. At an angle Lady Gu couldn't see, Lady Wang gave her a "you idiot" look. Level 4 spiritual lords? Come on. Feng Wu had killed plenty of level 6 spiritual lords on their way back. That girl seemed to make progress every single day. God knew what level she was at now. Having 2 level 4 spiritual lords fight Feng Wu was like sending sheep to fight a tiger. Lady Wang almost couldn't be bothered to watch the fight. Sister-in-law, come to Fallen Star Yard with me. I'll beat her up until she begs for forgiveness. Lady Wang was speechless. Well, sister-in-law, why don't you get Qi back? A girl of her age won't want many people to see her like that. I'll go check the warehouse and help you build a new courtyard. Hence, Lady Gu let Lady Wang go back to her own business. Chapter 2272 His Royal Highness Takes Sides 4. Chapter 2272 His Royal Highness Takes Sides 4. Lady Gu led the group of people toward Fallen Star Yard without knowing that there was a guest there. Feng Sun almost tripped on the formation when he jumped over the wall. Xiao Wu, why has the formation been activated again? I thought you said that it cost too many spiritual stones. The higher the level of the formation was, the more spiritual stones it would cost. Feng Wu was too busy with her work and ignored Feng Sun. Feng Sun didn't mind it either. Moving closer, he saw that she was writing inscriptions on the roof tiles. The inscriptions seemed ordinary, but there was something intimidating about them. What are you doing? Feng Sun asked curiously. It's a ghost formation. Feng Wu grinned. What's that? Feng Sun asked curiously. Feng Wu pointed at the sky. I thought that the thunder formation alone would be enough, but it seems that someone needs to be taught more than a lesson. Following her finger, Feng Sun finally realized what was wrong. Hey, when was this set up? What is it? Feng Sun patted the pole, making it sway back and forth. Stop it! Stop! Help! He heard the voice above his head. What? At a closer look, Feng Sun noticed the girl. Is that a person up there? What's she doing on top of the pole? Qiuling almost burst into laughter. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Who's that girl? Feng Wu said, That's Feng Qi. Feng Sun asked, Who's that? Feng Wu put down her pen and said, Young Lord Feng, do you realize that I'm writing level 7 inscriptions? Feng Sun rubbed his chin in embarrassment. Ahem. I'll stop talking. She doesn't need to be so intimidating, thought Feng Sun. But he knew how impressive level 7 inscriptions were. In the entire imperial capital, not many people could do it. If she rose to level 8, even fewer people would be able to do it. Feng Sun walked up to Qiuling and asked her what happened. Qiuling pulled Feng Sun to the side and told him what Feng Qi and her family had done. Feng Sun's eyes widened in surprise. He then gave Feng Wu the thumbs up. That was indeed something she would do. However, those people had tried to marry the beautiful lady off. Did they have a death wish? By the way, what are you doing here? Feng Wu looked up at Feng Sun. Feng Sun smacked his head. Gosh, I almost forgot. Wait here. He was gone as soon as he finished speaking. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. That was very Feng Sun. Feng Qi was still shouting in midair, but Feng Wu completely ignored her and concentrated on guarding Fallen Star Yard. In the Crown Prince's residence outside the Imperial Palace. Boss Jun, Boss Jun. Feng Sun ran into the residence to find the Crown Prince cultivating on the roof. He heard Feng Sun but didn't reply. Seeing this, Feng Sun didn't disturb him. He asked Feng instead, Steward Feng, that fire dragon rod which the western states sent as their yearly tribute, do we still have it? All the states and kingdoms would send rare treasures to the imperial capital, and the Crown Prince was usually the first to see all of them. Only those he didn't want would go into the imperial vault. Chapter 2273, His Royal Highness Takes Side 5. Chapter 2273, His Royal Highness Takes Side 5. Feng said, It's in the warehouse. Feng Sun said, I need to borrow it. It's urgent. Feng chuckled. I have the authority to take weapons out of the warehouse, but young Lord Feng, you should at least tell me what you need it for. Feng Sun then told him what Feng Wu was doing. He added, It looks like that girl is ready for a big fight. I'm looking forward to it. I remember that the fire dragon rod has an adhesive quality. Feng nodded. That's right. Any enemy within the rod's attack range will be caught by the force and won't be able to get away. Let me borrow it, Feng Su said. We all know that Xiao Wu cares more about the beautiful lady than anyone else. How dare Feng Yenya and his family try to do such a thing? I'd like to see them try and touch Xiao Wu. Feng seemed to be talking to Feng Sun, but he was stealing glances at the Crown Prince. He noticed that the Crown Prince's mind had wandered off. Only 2 hours ago, the teenager had kicked over a table, saying that he would never see the girl again, but it now seemed that he couldn't wait to go to her. Feng feigned a concerned tone. Is Miss Wu going to fight the third branch of the Feng clan on her own? Feng Sun told the truth. The third branch isn't all she has to fight against. There's the first branch as well. She's practically fighting the entire Feng clan. Feng said, That's very dangerous. Feng Sun said, You don't say. I heard that Lady Gu even went to get help from her own home. They're trying to corner Xiao Wu. I'm off. I need to give her this rod. Feng Sun dashed off. Feng then looked up at the Crown Prince. The look on his face was a mixture of concern and anger. One would never expect to see so many expressions on his face. Feng fought back his smile and looked down at his feet. Why are you still standing here? The Crown Prince jumped off the roof and asked the question in a cold voice. Feng asked, Your Royal Highness, what do you mean? The Crown Prince shot an angry glance at him. Feng said deliberately, It's late. Your Royal Highness, would you like to go to bed? The Crown Prince was furious. Feng said, Or would you like to take a walk? By the way, young Lord Feng came when you were cultivating, and he told me something. He then repeated the story Feng Sun had told him, and concluded with a sigh. I feel so sorry for Miss Wu. It was a dangerous trip, and when she finally came back home, something like this happened. She's all by herself, and there are no siblings to help her. I don't know if she can handle it. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. Feng said, According to young Lord Feng, everyone is against Miss Wu now. Feng Lu, the daughter of the first branch, is dead because of her, so of course, Feng Yanfeng holds a grudge against her. The third branch also wants to take advantage of her family. And there's also the Gu family. Poor Miss Wu. Chapter 2274, His Royal Highness Takes Side 6. Chapter 2274, His Royal Highness Takes Side 6. Feng glanced at the Crown Prince as he spoke. The teenager was frowning and seemed to feel sorry for Feng Wu. He decided to give him one last push. The Crown Prince snorted. Do you feel sorry for her? Why? She's so bold. She ran off as soon as she left the carriage. She's more proud than you think. Feng said, Well, she's been away from home for a while, and she misses her mother. The Crown Prince complained, Couldn't she just tell me so? Why couldn't she bring me with her? Did she have to avoid me? Judging by the look on his face, one would think that Feng Wu had bullied the Crown Prince. Jun Linyuan went on. She's so stupid. I'm a great patron, so why doesn't she make good use of it? Say my name, and no one will dare to touch her. Feng thought, Your Royal Highness, you're probably the person she wants to avoid the most. But he didn't dare to say that, because it would definitely set the Crown Prince off. His Royal Highness said, Isn't she stupid? Feng said, Yes. The Crown Prince said angrily, How dare you humiliate her? Feng had a headache now and hoped that someone would get the Crown Prince out of his sight. He said, People say that your Royal Highness only treats her as a bedwarming maid. Hearing that, the Crown Prince kicked the pillar of the pavilion next to him. The pavilion immediately collapsed. She knows perfectly well that she's not. He then kicked around some stones on the ground. The last time Feng saw that look, it was on the face of a 7-year-old. He had never expected to see such a look on the Crown Prince's face. She's such an idiot. The Crown Prince walked away. Your Royal Highness, are we going to stay out of it? Feng asked. The Crown Prince turned around and glared at him. Don't be so dumb. Tell those people that no spiritual king is allowed to get involved. Try it and the Gu family won't be a major clan anymore. He walked away after that. Feng was speechless. Despite calling Feng Wu an idiot, the Crown Prince still took her side. Feng Wu was a level 9 spiritual lord now. That was to say, as long as no spiritual king was involved, no one could defeat her. The Crown Prince was so. Feng rubbed his nose. He decided to see how things played out, and would only show up when the time was right. The Crown Prince should learn some strategy. If he gave his help willingly, the girl wouldn't think much of it. She would only cherish it if the help came just in time. Feng Wu had no idea that the Crown Prince had set up such a rule for this fight. Right now, she was looking at Feng Sun curiously. Feng Sun was showing her the weapon he had just fetched from the Crown Prince's residence. No one can get away from this fire dragon rod if they're caught by it. Isn't it great? Feng Sun gloated. Feng Wu weighed it in her hand and saw that it was indeed a nice weapon. Together with her ground control, she would be quite invincible. Just then, she heard an angry shout outside. Feng Wu, come out here and meet your death. Lady Gu was very arrogant now that she had help. Chapter 2275 Battle 1. Chapter 2275 Battle 1. Frowning, Feng Wu walked out with the fire dragon rod in her hand. She then saw dozens of people waiting outside. That's very bold of you, walking out like this. Lady Gu smirked. Release Qi now, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you'd wish you were dead. Feng Wu glanced at the group of people behind Lady Gu. The two men behind her were the most capable ones, and they were both level 4 spiritual lords. I'd wish I were dead? Feng Wu found it to be a very presumptuous claim. Are you sure you can do that with these people? Lady Gu glared at her. Feng Wu, you're going to pay for what you said. I don't think you know this, but they're both. She pointed at Zhong and Yi. They're both level 4 spiritual lords. Feng Wu said, I know that. Lady Gu was done talking to Feng Wu. She waved her hand and said, Take her down. Zhong and Yi nodded at each other. They couldn't detect any spiritual essence on Feng Wu and decided that she was completely useless. The two men couldn't be bothered to deal with her and thought that the ordinary guards they brought would be enough. With a wave of Zhong's hand, the 20 people behind him charged at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gripped the fire dragon rod. Feng Sun says that this stick has an adhesive quality. I'd like to try it. As she spoke, the guards had almost reached her. Miss Wu, watch out! Behind her, Granny Zhao and Uncle Chiu cried out. They still didn't know what it meant to be a level 9 spiritual lord, nor did they know how capable Feng Wu was compared with these people. Qiuling said, Don't worry. These people are all junior spiritual elders. Even I can easily beat them up, let alone Miss Wu. Even so, Uncle Chiu and Granny Zhao were still nervous. At the same time, Feng Wu raised the fire dragon rod. Thump, 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 crack, 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 bang. Screams filled the air. The men who charged at Feng Wu were sent flying backward and fell to the ground. They cried in pain with tears running down their faces. Feng Wu was amazing. She made sure that she broke a bone whenever she hit them, and those men all rolled around on the ground and screamed in pain. Both Zhong and Yi were astonished. Lady Gu was shocked as well. She stared at Feng Wu in disbelief and said, How can this be? Everything had taken place in the blink of an eye. Waving the fire dragon rod, Feng Wu beamed at her. I'm very efficient when it comes to beating up mad dogs. Who are you calling a mad dog? He was furious. The next second, he charged at Feng Wu with a sword in his hand. Uncle Chiu cried out, Watch out! Ding! As soon as he said that, the rod clashed with the sword. Chapter 2276 Battle 2. Chapter 2276 Battle 2. The impact immediately snapped the sword in half, but the rod didn't stop. Thump! It hit Yi on the forehead. Blood ran down Yi's face. It felt like he was going to bleed to death. Lady Gu couldn't believe her eyes. According to her sister-in-law, the two guards were supposed to be level 4 spiritual lords. Why were they so easily defeated? Zhong's face darkened. That girl had barely used a full stance to knock Yi out. Zhong didn't think that things would be much different for him. Feng Wu waved the rod as she approached Lady Gu with a smile. Didn't you say that I would wish I were dead? I'd like to see what you've got. Although Feng Wu was smiling, Lady Gu felt that she was facing a wolf. She was frightened. She then shoved Zhong. It's your turn. Zhong was speechless. There was nothing he could do because he was on the same level as Yi. He would end up the same as Yi. He cleared his throat and said, Miss Wu, I'm sure we can reach some sort of agreement. Feng Wu smiled faintly. No, we can't. If you want to live, kneel on the ground and call Lady Gu a bitch 10 times. That way I'll spare your life. What? Zhong was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do. Lady Gu stared at Feng Wu and shouted, "How dare you!" Feng Wu started counting down. Zhong weighed the pros and cons. As the captain of Lord Gu's guards, if he insulted Lady Gu, he would still be dead, so he drew out his sword. Poof! His right arm was severed and fell to the ground. Blood gushed out, splashing all over Lady Gu. Lady Gu screamed, "Miss Feng Wu, I've cut off my arm. I apologize for having offended you." After that, he picked Yi up and walked away. The other servants who were lying all over the ground were in awe of Feng Wu. Seeing Zhong and Yi leave, they left as well. Soon, only Lady Gu was left behind. Feng Wu grinned at her, but she glared at Feng Wu. "You defeated a level 4 spiritual lord. What level are you at now? Level 5? Lady Gu's voice was shaking. Feng Wu said, "Aunt, would you like to try it?" Lady Gu said, "Do you think that you're invincible now? I won't give up. I've never been defeated before. I'll be back." She wanted to leave after that. On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. "Wait." Feng Wu watched her from behind and said, "Do you think you can come and go just like that? After you brought a group of minions here?" Seeing the look in Feng Wu's eyes, Lady Gu felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you want, then?" Feng Wu jerked her chin in Zhong's direction. "In your dreams." Lady Gu glared at Feng Wu. "Who do you think you are? You can't order me to cut off my hand." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.